Hey guys, so today I have Dr. Carolyn Dean with us again, which I'm so excited to have a second interview opportunity with her. Dr. Carolyn Dean is a medical doctor and also a naturopathic doctor who has authored several books, one of which is The Magnesium Miracle. And that's some of the topics that we're going to be diving into today, how magnesium affects certain health issues, the function of the thyroid, and much, much more. So let's get started.
Are you looking for answers, searching for natural ways to support your body, or frustrated with mainstream solutions? So are we. Welcome to the Renewed Hope Wellness Podcast, where we're on a search for answers. We're going off the beaten path and diving into natural solutions to health and wellness issues. Our goal, empower you to be your own health advocate. So let's get started.
So, Carolyn, could you talk to me a little bit about the thyroid and how magnesium plays such a crucial role in that? And then also, yeah, and also, yeah, there why we're having issues of like the rise of thyroid problems. I mean, it's really getting to be where it's 1 in 3, like it's a lot. So, can you kind of explain the role of that and why we're probably not seeing that improve any as far as the hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, and all the thyroid issues?
Thanks, Happy. Yes, there's a lot of layers to the thyroid. I think the most important for your audience, which may be more women, is as soon as you have a pregnancy, your thyroid has been drained to a certain extent to support your baby. And we know this in allopathic medicine because we follow the thyroid test through a pregnancy, but then there's nothing preventative that's done. We in the allopathic part of my world, we wait until the thyroid is really depleted sufficiently to give thyroid hormone replacement. Even in my other side, the alternative community, we wait and do what armor thyroid or desiccated thyroid, something quote natural rather than a synthetic thyroid. But both people miss the step of using minerals to make thyroid hormone. What you need, and I discovered this after I with a chemist made my picometer magnesium. Then I said I have to get a multiple mineral. People don't know how much to take, and should you buy 8 bottles of minerals and take one of each? It's very confusing for folks. So in this multiple mineral research, I found that there are 9 minerals that are required for thyroid hormone production, 9 of them. We know about iodine because T3 stands for 3 iodine molecules. T4 is 4 iodine. You think, okay, give more iodine. But what happens is when you give iodine, it's supposed to be worked on by selenium. And then some people in alternative medicine, oh, well, we'll give selenium. But then you go down the railroad tracks and it's not linear. I mean, things are just happening all over the place. But to put it in a linear sequence, then you might need copper. And then there's boron and manganese and molybdenum and magnesium. There are 9 minerals. And no one is talking about that. They probably never will. But what I've found when we were testing this multiple mineral, I was using it myself because I was on armor thyroid and cold hands and feet. I didn't have the low energy or anything, but it was mainly preventive because I have a family history of low thyroid. Who doesn't? But 6 weeks after taking my multiple mineral, my hands were nice and warm, my toes were warm, and I was even more hyper than usual. So instead of weaning off my armor thyroid that I will tell everyone to do, I stopped it and I haven't looked back. And it's that sort of thing because I know, Happy, you are so into minerals. You are just. I heard your interview, your podcast with Stephanie Seneff, and I mean, it almost appeared like you knew more than she did. It was real.
Not at all.
It was pretty enlightening, the information and how important you just kept bringing up how important minerals are. And in Stephanie's world, with the glyphosates, they just grab our minerals and chelate them and remove them from our food. It's really incredible what's happening. So I appreciated that podcast, and I appreciate your interest in minerals.
Thank you very much. And I think I'm amazed by minerals. I feel like they do run the whole body. And if the messengers are not there, then of course the signals get crossed. And that's where I feel like a broken record on it's mineral loss. You have to put that back. And I think with pregnancy, I've even seen that with infertility, that they're not diagnosable as hypothyroid. So, but they can't get pregnant. They've been to fertility, I mean, even fertility clinics and all kinds of things to hold the pregnancy, and no one's looking at, yes, your TSH is within normal range, but you're not converting that, which I think is where
Yeah.
magnesium is so important in the conversion of T4, which is that inactive form into the usable form, which is why your TSH, is that correct, Carolyn? Like that conversion happens in the magnesium dependency or
It's one of the minerals. Magnesium, it's responsible for 80% of known metabolic functions, and it affects about 600 to 800 enzyme processes. So it's probably working on several steps along the way. And that's why, as I've heard you say, you cannot depend on one thing. But I mean, what I depend on, because I had to treat my heart palpitations with something, and it turned out it was magnesium. Was totally deficient in the headaches and everything, leg cramps, twitches. And I found when I took magnesium, I got the laxative effect. So I was stuck. I was soaking in Epsom salts baths. I was pouring magnesium oil on me. You'd make your own magnesium from distilled water and magnesium chloride flakes, and I was getting rashes and everything. So what I did was I worked with a chemist and created a non-laxative stabilized ion of magnesium. And that's what is important in mineral absorption. Are the mineral ions stable so that they can be absorbed into the cells? This is new knowledge. I know we've talked about it. You understand the process, but the public doesn't really realize that when you take a mineral compound, the body then has to work on it to turn it
right?
into ions that can be absorbed. And that happens naturally in the fluid of the blood, a mineral compound that's two different mineral ions. It will disassociate temporarily. And for an infinitesimal second, it will disassociate, and then the mineral can pop into a cell. And what happens is if you've got a, mm, if you've got a lot, what should I say? Even toxins, if you've got fluorides, if you've got chlorine, that can start grabbing onto minerals and make the whole complex unavailable. There's a lot going on in a toxic body. But if you've got a stabilized ion of a mineral, it's going to be absorbed. And that's why I find my minerals really are far superior because they're 100%, I should say 99% absorbed at the cellular level. And you talk about RBC, red blood cell magnesium tests, as as more important or more viable than a serum magnesium. But what I've been doing in my university studies is testing ionized magnesium. That is the what we want. We want to know how many ions of magnesium are available at any one time. And in our research, we had a group of humans. It wasn't an animal study. Humans took 300 milligrams of my magnesium, and 2 hours later, we had a blood test, and the ionized magnesium test, an IMAG test, showed a high level of magnesium in the test, in the blood test. And that showed that those magnesium ions were just hanging out and doing their thing, being absorbed into the cells. And that's what we have to look for. I know the RBC test, I've recommended it because we can't get the IMAG test
Right.
in, yeah, outside of it. You have to be really sick and go to the ER. No, not even the ICU to get an IMAG test.
Yeah.
But that's why people are not being diagnosed with magnesium deficiency because we don't have the proper tests. And even if we do, we were talking earlier, the range of red blood cell magnesium, 4.2 to 6.8. And if someone is 4.3, they're told, oh, your magnesium is just fine. And it's not. We want to be up in the sixes. If you're down in the low fours, that means you're sick like everybody else, and you're low in magnesium like 80% of the population. And that's a problem with testing itself, is it's measuring a sick population. There's nobody really looking at, well, should I have a high level of this or a low level? And that's what we try to educate people about.
Yeah, and there are some, like depending on the reference range for the region that labs are tested in, is really based on the health or the lack of that population. So it does change, and we actually have some lab ranges through specific labs that actually do they go from 4.0 to 6.0. So you couldn't even get to the 6.1 or 6.5, you'd be flagged high, which to me is like where you start to see the reference ranges are suggestions. They're not really a marker to go by for optimal health, in my opinion. And I've been amazed with just knowing that the IMAC test is the top of the line gold standard, but not having availability for it. Very discouraging. And I don't know why. I'd love to ask that question to the people that make those decisions. But the RBC magnesium, of course, representing more than the serum would, even in that, I'm amazed at how many people are they're at 5. And so there's this, you think, well, 6 point, 6+ is not that far from 5, but when they're having AFib or they're having leg cramps or migraines, it's like there's a big difference in 5.0 on an RBC magnesium compared to a 6.1. Symptom wise, it seems like it's a game changer, you know.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
but not being able to measure that outside of it, I know it's second best to, but it is a better way than like the serum magnesium. I've actually been surprised at how many people are lined up to have an ablation procedure for AFib. And when
Right.
I just ask, has anyone checked your red blood cell magnesium level? Not the cardiologist, not no one. And it's like, no. So we order the test, and then in my experience, every time they're usually flagged low. It's like in the threes. And it's like, wow, would you like to try to see if you can get that level up before you make the step for an ablation? Um, and why am I asking those questions? That's always part of the conversation. I'm not a cardiologist. I wouldn't even begin to know where to start on any of that. But it's a very cheap test to run, and it's not a harmful test. So I don't know, why do you think that not to get edgy here, but why do you think that simple test isn't just ran in a basic panel? Is it because the information is just not taught? It's like kind of like a lack of knowledge on that side, or do you think it's because it's a supplement and we couldn't really expect a supplement to be that powerful? Or
Yeah, all those reasons. We didn't learn about minerals or vitamins in medical school. The standard blood test is serum magnesium, and that only measures 1% of the total body magnesium. And the range of the serum magnesium is the tiny, tiny range. And what happens there is it stays in that range. So doctors get the impression, well, it always tests normal. So why even test it? It doesn't even appear on an electrolyte panel. So they've put serum magnesium, they've just put magnesium out of their mind. And yet if they turn the corner into the obstetrics unit, they see people who put up IV drips for eclampsia and the eclampsia symptoms of seizures, high blood pressure, and fluid retention, and they see magnesium create miracles.
Yeah.
So they're not thinking so that this what happens with the serum magnesium, why it stays in that range is because it is so darn crucial that when it goes low, then the body pulls magnesium out of bones and muscles to keep it in the range that will keep the heart beating properly. I mean, that's what's happening. And then, the RBC magnesium test, it probably requires different equipment or whatever. That's what we're running into with the IMAG test, the ionized magnesium test. Is, oh, well, we don't have the machinery to do it, and then they just don't bother. And it's really, I mean, it's killing people not knowing what their magnesium is.
Yeah, and recently I had a client that came in and she had had an AFib situation. Her blood pressure had went up, couldn't regulate, dropping, spiking. And then she said, actually, I said, what did they do in the ER? And she said, I felt so much better with whatever they gave me in that IV. And I said it was magnesium. And she was like amazed at that. I said that they know how important it is. That's a known fact because with preeclampsia, like you have this whole process. But until you're in an emergency situation, it's like, oh, that couldn't be it. And I can't tell you how many people bring their labs in and they're like, it's not my magnesium. My magnesium's not low. Well, in that 1%, tightly regulated, no, you're right. That 1% is good. We're good there. But it's just, I think being able to understand that we find what we're looking for. And that's kind of like sometimes we're just not looking. And that I think the body's like, I really just need this. I just need help. I need a little bit of help on that side. And I always tell clients when there's so many jobs for magnesium to do, well, your body
Mhm.
prioritize. It will decide what keeps you alive is most important, not concerned so much about all the other things. If it's forced to make a decision, I think that's where we start to see symptoms coming up with thyroid conditions and things is the body's still doing the process, but we're asking it to do it on such a tiny amount that of course it doesn't do a great job. We wouldn't either if we were asked to work at 20% capacity, and we're only allowed that much. But anyway.
Well, yeah, the other thing about the testing is because I'm not in practice right now anymore, ever, and I have a dietary supplement company, we don't do testing. And with something like magnesium, the fail-safe of it, even with my magnesium, which is uh, non-laxative, you're safe in taking it. When I got rid of my heart palpitations and all, I was taking a lot of my magnesium. I took 1,200 milligrams
Oh, wow.
because on a store-bought magnesium, 50 milligrams would give me the laxative effect. But there was a certain point after about a year or so where all my symptoms, I had a dozen different symptoms. They were all gone, and I could go a day without my magnesium and I wouldn't get any symptoms. So I thought, okay. And at the same time, Happy, my laxative effect started kicking in. So I knew I was saturated. And now I'm only on 300 to 450 milligrams, which is like the RDA for magnesium. I tell people they probably need 600. So what I say to people in general is you can safely take magnesium unless you're on dialysis or have bowel blockage or myasthenia gravis. There are only 3 or 4 contraindications to taking magnesium, and even those are suspect because what they're giving people is the compound magnesium compounds, and they aren't giving them the ionized magnesium, which is what the body's looking for. And also, I'm sure you've noticed magnesium it's just so popular now. It's just, through the roof. Everybody I talk to, oh yeah, I'm taking magnesium. They've all heard about it, but they're taking ones that have a lot of marketing pushing them. Oh, you have to take this magnesium because it has 7 different forms of magnesium. Well, all those forms, the body has to separate them and take out the magnesium and use it. If you're trying to treat really bad magnesium deficiency, you want magnesium. You don't really want the compound where there may be 50 milligrams of magnesium and then 500 of the chloride or the oxide or the glycinate. You want the magnesium. So it's very frustrating when people say, well, I'm taking magnesium and it's not really helping. Well, it may not be helping because you're really not getting that much magnesium. In this, the magnesium L-threonine, or threonate, I should say, they did such an incredible job marketing. They made everybody think it's the only magnesium that can get across the blood-brain barrier. And when you look at the label, it says magnesium L-threonate, 2,000 milligrams, and you think, wow, I'm really getting a lot of magnesium. You turn over the bottle and the label says, well, in 2 capsules, the elemental amount of magnesium is 114 milligrams. So
That's it.
magnesium is so popular, you're going to be skunked if you don't pay attention.
Yeah, and we have that conversation often where people say, well, I take magnesium, so I just need to take more of the type I'm taking. And I'm like, well, you could, but honestly, you're not absorbing that very well. So you probably want to change what you're doing, which is I have found that from personal, like my mother has had tremendous benefits from the ionized magnesium, that honestly from your supplier, because it's amazing that she could never tolerate 100 milligrams of magnesium capsule, and she's had issues with all kinds of inflammatory bowel issues, and she tells everyone that she's like that is life changing because before her magnesium RBC was always very, very low, so much so that she had heart palpitations, severe leg cramps, muscle pain, but she couldn't tolerate it in the gut because it wasn't absorbable. And now she will not miss. She's like, and honestly, I think that made me a believer more than anything that the picometer, there is a reason that people can actually take this and not just immediately have the laxative effect when they're nowhere near a therapeutic dose. And it's hard to get people to understand you can have a laxative effect from an unabsorbable magnesium with a very low dose and it not do you any good, honestly.
Well, also, happy people don't realize how many symptoms there can be of magnesium deficiency. So they just think of it, oh, it's a simple mineral. I have something really serious. I don't think a little mineral will help me. So there's all those layers, and also their doctors don't support it. Most doctors don't know anything about magnesium. They'll say it's a laxative. And they'll say, well, take it up to the point you have the laxative effect and then pull back. So they're not allowing their body to take care of what do I have in here? Over 65 different health conditions that are misdiagnosed. They're really potentially magnesium deficiency, but we call them a disease and we give a drug, and that drug can drain more magnesium and make you sicker.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating. But thank goodness, with podcasts like yours, people are getting the information they need.
Yeah, and to start putting supplements into that category of, are they able to be activated by the body, and at what cost? Is it going to be 12 steps of a process and that requires energy, which can't be used for other things because your body's trying to utilize what we're, often dumping in high amounts. And I've always questioned that, because I'm like, how many minerals do I need to join with a huge amount of vitamin D, for example, or any of those, fat soluble vitamins? There's a cost involved. And I think we are creating magnesium deficiencies as we try to correct vitamin deficiencies. There has to be a better way to do that, which is really the more whole food sources. And I know you and I talked a little bit about that, I think, off air last time, but there's so many complexities to it that it's just, we're not so simple to say, your vitamin D's low, here's 5,000 IU's, now go be happy. It's like the
Well, yeah,
magnesium full.
what you're getting at is magnesium is necessary to activate vitamin D. So all the research on vitamin D is very equivocal. People are very confused because some studies show you need it and some show, well, I don't think it worked, but it could be the magnesium status of the person. I hadn't had my vitamin D blood test done for probably ever. And when I had it done a few years ago, it was 19. Optimum could be around 60. So here I am living in Maui. I get a bit of sun. I try to stay out of direct sun, but I don't think I had vitamin D deficiency problems. I was saturated with everything else, but I decided, well, let me see if I can change my numbers. So I took 10,000 units of my own vitamin D3, K2, and 3 months later, I redid the blood test and I was up to 63. So I increased my values, but what happened with my magnesium? It went down from 6.4 to 4.8.
Oh
I
my.
was using up my magnesium to deal with the vitamin D. And I have heard that story so much in symptoms where people say, oh, my doctor gave me 50,000 units of this vitamin D. It's synthetic. And all my magnesium deficiency symptoms came back.
Yeah.
The body had to deal with this vitamin D and it used up their magnesium. So what I've done in my programs and protocols, because I've been at this for over 50 years, and I realized that the amount people need, the form, it's all about absorption. So what I've done is try to create formulas that are low potency, food-based, organic, picometer, so that it takes the guesswork out, because people just don't have time to do the research anymore. I mean, when you listen to a podcast like you had with Stephanie Senoff, it's just so over the top, loaded with information that I personally love, but I'm listening to it as I would one of my customers. It's like, it's too much. It's too much. Just tell me what to do. And
Yeah.
if yeah, if they trust you, then okay, fine. And that's where I come from in my work. We're talking now a lot about the MAHA agenda, Make America Healthy Again. And I'm going to be speaking at one of their fundraisers in July. And I'm just going to set it out. This is what you do. You tell people to stop sugar, stop seed oils, and then take food-based, organic, pico. I'll just lay it out. I say, here is what you can do for the nation. It would save trillions of dollars if people were on the right nutrients, because that's why we're overeating, in part because our body is trying to filter out the vitamins and the minerals that we need to make things go. And I've heard you say in podcast, MGATP. which is adenosine triphosphate is our energy molecule, but it's always attached to magnesium. If you don't have magnesium, you don't make energy. So that's where I start with magnesium and then kind of work out from there. And what I'm seeing in a lot of alternative practitioners, they tend to do a lot of testing. They're doing food allergy testing and more
Yeah.
heavy metal testing, hair analysis, all these tests. And as we've already said, even with hair analysis, if you're testing a sick population, how can you use that as your standard?
Yeah.
When I had my hair analysis test done by a mutual friend, he was a bit perplexed because I had so much magnesium, it threw off all my ratios. And it looked like I was abnormal, but no, I was just properly saturated with my minerals. So
And it allowed those
we
minerals to place and do instead of storing like they would in a hair test. It's like you used them,
yeah,
which is great, and not at a level that they couldn't be maintained, too. So um, I think that the magnesium dependent, and I say that all day long, it's almost like revolutionary every day to me because it's like, when and I've done all of that, Carolyn, I do still do some testing, but honestly, I'm starting to come to the place of like, if we just start with what we know is most likely not available instead of trying to worry about the numbers. And there are times where it's like we need a baseline. I need to know, are we absorbing? Are you gaining ground as your symptoms are improving? So I like labs for that. And it helps people I feel like stay on board with their protocol because they can feel better,
really,
but they can see that connection. But I do think we're testing everything to death on many levels. And I've really started to say, if we really believe that minerals run our body, then what we're testing and all these different things actually would be streamlined into let's get the basics met, and the body will figure out so many things like that.
yeah, I think when we got into vitamins and mineral supplementation, I was, I've been around at this, since the early 70s. When I was a teenager, I was reading the handful of health books out there. In in the city where I finally went to med school, there wasn't even a health food store.
Mm.
When I went into my first year of practice, I think there was two health food stores, and I made one of the health food stores, the owners, a millionaire because I just kept sending people to him. The first vitamins were food-based. They were awesome and they helped people. They food-based and organic for the most part. And then when I guess maybe big pharma or chemists got got involved, they said, well, this chemical structure, we can make it out of coal tar. We can make synthetic vitamins. Let's do that. And I watched that process. The B vitamins that used to be food-based, now they're synthetic, and doctors would at conferences saying, well, this 10 milligram B vitamin isn't working, so we went to 50. Now, oh, we have to go to 100. Oh, I think now we have to go to IM or IV injections of these vitamins because they're not working. They weren't working because they were synthetic. So we've evolved to or devolved to a state where the studies that you see in the literature about vitamins and maybe minerals to a certain extent, they're not valid because they're using synthetics. They probably don't use the right amounts. They either use too much or too little. So the whole nutrition research is very suspect. And you're saying it, I'm saying it. I don't have people do a lot of testing. Sometimes they've had testing before they come to us as a customer, but I think you can put the testing aside until you get the basics. Let's get your basic magnesium and minerals. I mean, that's the groundwork. And then the food-based methylated Bs. I don't do a MTHFR test. I'm not really for the 23andMe blood testing. I think they've gone bankrupt actually because the 23andMe that was from the Human Genome Project where
Right.
they thought they would find out what the all the genes in the body and then they could splice them when they found a problem. Oh, we'll take that gene out. They were so silly. They speculated they'd find 100,000 genes. They found 23,000. And that blew their mind. And that's what really got the epigenetics movement going because it's not the genes, but the interaction of the genes with cofactors that was making the body move. So the whole Human Genome Project gets sold to, I don't know if this is true. This is a story I made up. It gets sold to 23andMe. So then they sell it to the public and oh, you can learn all about your body. What they did is they told people these are the top 100 problems you have with your genes. And it terrified people. It's like, oh my gosh, I've got this, I've got that. How can I possibly cope? And I don't like that. It's really negative testing that there were no answers for these people. And with the MTHFR, maybe 40-50% of people have problems um, creating, what is it, methylating.
Mhm.
And it's possibly because of magnesium deficiency, because of how important magnesium is in methylation. And they say it's such a problem, and they give high doses of synthetic folic acid, which isn't even a good methyl. Um, Maybe they're giving some B12. But what I say is, 3 and 4 milligrams of methylated food-based bees, and you've got someone who will gradually get their health back. See, what happens as well is when medical doctors got involved with naturopathic medicine, they went with high potencies. Like I mentioned, the 50,000 units of vitamin D2. I mean, you don't have to do that. You give the, you can even just give the body some sun and it will improve their vitamin D levels. So we've got, the overtaking of our bodies by allopathic medicine, who then they left their private practices to join HMO clinics and be paid like a servant of the corporation, so that they just have their 7-minute appointment with a patient, give out a prescription, and then take the next one. Medicine has devolved. I'm so glad I'm not in a private practice, although I still carry my California license. And why I do that, Happy, is so that I can do my continuing medical education credits to get my license. And it just every year it gets worse and worse and worse. The amount of drugs, the biologics now that they're using, which they're just kind of made up, protein, whatever, from animal sources and vegetable sources, and they put them together and act like it's a drug. I know that, I mean, that sounds really silly what I'm saying, but if you read biologic medicines, it's got no sense of science or rationality, common sense to give people body tissues, animal or human body tissues, mix those up in some sort of chemical formula and inject it in people. And the injections, that's a big part of the new medicine because they're more expensive. You and Stephanie Seneff talked about Wegovy, the Ozempic, and all that. You know what? The main horrible thing that I found out that it's doing? It circumvents the vagus nerve.
Oh,
It, the factors in the stomach that tell the brain that you're full and all the rest of it, the GLP-1 inhibitors. Well, when you take that as an injection, it goes right to the brain. The message is supposed to go up through the vagus nerve. And when the vagus nerve get that information, then a lot of problems of vagus nerve insufficiency build up. Check that out. It's another thing that will blow your mind. So this information goes to the brain, tells you, oh, I'm full. Actually, I'm nauseous. Actually, I think I have to vomit. I can't stand the sight of food. That's what Ozempic is doing. It is creating medical anorexia bulimia.
Yeah.
That's what it's doing. And that's your weight loss miracle.
Yeah, at the expense of, I mean, with that messaging, which makes total sense that you say that, you get, you get the gut dysbiosis and you're getting the gastroparesis, like the lack of motility, because there's no process that's happening. It's been shut off at the tap, so to speak. And so the whole vagal nerve stimulation to process the food you didn't eat, all those things aren't happening. And it's frightening, honestly, that I think that that is out there and that people are really establishing the risk factors as they take it. And I think that that is criminal, honestly. I think that it definitely is not something that needs to be entered into lightly. And of course, that's a whole nother conversation. But what is it doing to, if you're not intaking nutrition because your brain says you're not hungry and you're even repulsed by food, where are your nutrients coming from? Because we're getting food that's so nutrient depleted if we're even eating it. I mean, you're
Yes.
talking 5 times the amount for nutrient value from 5-to-1 ratio now. And then you have not eating at all. So it's like, what is that doing with your minerals? Because we do have a bank account of sorts with our minerals, and hopefully we're putting deposits back in. But when we limit even that, I think it's scary what it can lead to. And I think the long view is not really being looked at all because it does, everything comes with a cost. Synthetic vitamins, yeah, it's a great idea. We isolated what we think or what they think is the powerful component in a food. And then you separate it out, and the food had the components to digest it and break it down. And when you remove that, you do not even have the same. It's not even the same food. And then you microwave it on top of that so that it's not it's not even molecularly the same. So it's like how, I am amazed every day at how fearfully and wonderfully we are made. And you'll hear me say that because I just walk away going, I know that sickness is on the rise. I get that disease is at an all-time high. But if we could appreciate and just have gratitude for a few moments every day of what these bodies are pushing through and that we're still here, and it's amazing.
Well, here's something that you will love. Um, when I was writing one of my last books, I just have so much going on. It was about mental health, guideline to mental health. I looked back at the Candace Pert work. Do you recall that name? Candace Pert, she wrote a book called The Molecules of Emotion. She was a PhD researcher, and she was the first person to isolate opioid receptors. And she isolated GABA receptors and
Okay.
found all this important information about how our bodies have receptors for creating neurotransmitters that give us our emotions. And she said that our receptors for GABA, for example, are from head to toe. They're not just in our brain. And these receptors are responsive to your emotions. If you are joyful, you will open up your receptors and create more neurotransmitters that are joyful. If you're sad or depressed, you'll kind of shut them down and you won't have that the GABA um, surge.
Right.
What allopathic medicine did with that information is they created SSRI antidepressants. They said, "Oh, we can manipulate these receptors. Yahoo! Let's go." And it really crushed Candace. She thought it was just horrible because she or one of her supporters said she proved that we can build bliss.
Oh,
Isn't that beautiful? We can create, build, we can facilitate our own bliss by our own emotions, like you said, appreciation. When I walk on, I live in Maui, I'm so blessed. When I walk on the beach most mornings, I say I collect smiles. You walk along, and if you look over at someone and smile, they will smile back. They will, unless they're on their, the silly Gen Zs on their phones, but you can collect smiles. And in Maui, it is, I was teasing people on my radio show on Monday. I have a weekly radio show. And I said, it's so friendly in Maui. You could go up to someone and start talking to them, and within a couple of minutes, they're giving you a hug. I went to Costco the other day with my friend, and the person before me, a young woman, she gave the person who checks you out the door, looks at your slip and, oh yeah, you got that many, okay. And young guy, and she gave him a hug, he gave her a hug. So I went out and he looked at my few things and I said, can I get a hug? And he gave me a hug.
it's
And
contagious.
it that's the word. It is contagious, but
Yeah.
you have to start it. And once you start it, you can't stop. It's contagious and addictive. So yeah, that's one of the major messages what that I try to promote. And I don't know if we're winding down, but I have to tell you this, Happy. In the brain book I was doing, brain nutrient book, I found the number of mitochondria in neurons. I hadn't thought of it before, but I was thinking, well, the our mitochondria harbor our Krebs cycle, which makes our energy. And I knew that the heart, uh, muscle cells have 5,000 mitochondria. So they're really working out hard. Each mitochondria um, has a lot of Krebs cycle involved, and each ATP requires magnesium. So I mean, you can imagine the trillions of ions of magnesium that are required for the heart. Okay, 5,000 in the heart. In the brain, each neuron has 2 million mitochondria. So
It's you can't
that's what,
get your mind around that for sure.
oh, that's what makes us wonder, is dementia magnesium deficiency? Is Parkinson's related to magnesium deficiency? What about Alzheimer's? These these neurons are desperate for magnesium. And they're not, I mean, you think of these poor people in nursing homes. I can't even get the family of these people in nursing home, they can't even give my magnesium or my minerals to their family. So here's what I do, because I have a magnesium lotion and a thicker magnesium balm. I say, put that lotion in a nice hand cream bottle and tell the nurses, oh, you can put it on, or your family member can put it on themselves, and they're getting magnesium. That's how you can help.
Yeah, that and you have to be creative like that because the food quality, I mean, there's just so many factors where you're like, how could you feel better? How could you heal? It's almost a setup for failure, honestly. That and that in that, as far as like the forms of magnesium, the forms of the minerals that you have, these are all picometer, right? So like absorption wise, of course, transdermally, if someone can't do the liquid, but that's what, like for the audience, the reason yours is different is that these ions are actually small enough to get into absorption and not have to have the body try to figure out how do we use this thing that's been put in the body.
Right. And for people who are very sensitive, because in your practice, I'm sure you get people who you have to test. You know, that person that was going for an ablation, you had to prove to them that, well, you could use this magnesium, do a little experiment and see if you're better. You get people who probably are so scared of taking anything. You can tell them, okay, well, spray a little bit of this on your arm. The multiple mineral, spray a little bit on your neck. It will be absorbed and they will start feeling it. Right, I had a bit of an ankle sprain, so I started soaking in my magnesium and then putting my magnesium balm on it and just putting a sock on and going to bed. Boom. I've got my healing going on.
Yeah, and I think just being able to know the role that magnesium plays in ATP production and how medications, and I think we touched on that. It's always amazing when I say to clients that all of your pharmaceuticals are magnesium dependent, meaning that they require that to be activated, even their drugs that are being put in, the
Yeah.
scale of that. And so it isn't any wonder to me. And I think in your the Magnesium Miracle, which I know you have revised that, and I want to get that copy. I meant to do that last time and you showed it again. And I thought yes, that's the one I have that kind of started my journey on that. And then is this one the kind of the newest revision, Carol? Okay.
Yeah.
So, and we'll
Yeah.
definitely put those
Look
in the
at this. This ended up being 600 pages in the last edition. You can People just don't have time to read that.
link.
This one is it's a couple hundred pages, but it's big print,
Yeah,
and
right.
and it's laid out. I put my comb at atrial fibrillation. This is number 9 of 65 different conditions. So people can go through and look at, oh, atherosclerosis, that's related to magnesium, anxiety, chronic fatigue, diabetes. Oh my goodness, fatigue, headaches.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've told me about a 3-year-old who had migraines from, well, a 28-year-old patient who had migraines since she was 3 years old. That is horrible. And using the picometer magnesium, she dropped her level of migraines
Oh,
precipitously.
yeah.
And migraines are the worst pain in the world. I've never had one. I certainly have had headaches when I was magnesium deficient, but it's the worst pain, and they give the strongest drugs. And the side effects from the drugs are sometimes just crippling. The headache keeps you from working, but then the side effects from the drugs keeps you from working as well.
Yeah.
So it
Understanding that the magnesium deficiency is being created, if it's the reason it's there, and then the medication requires so much of the magnesium just to get your body back to normal for you. And I think that's why so many people that if they're on one or more medication and have been for years, like levothyroxine with a thyroid medication, I tend to see that those are really magnesium deficient people when they've been on it for a long time. But when you add 3 medications and you're on those, it's almost like it does. It's like a bank account that you're only making, you're only cashing out. You're never putting anything in. And then we have people that by the time they get in their 50s now, the fatigue is so bad. And it's like, well,
Mhm.
can you make energy in the cell? That's the real question. And if you can't, then what does it take to make energy? And let's make sure that we bring that availability instead of chasing the pathogens, we strengthen the person. And I think
Right.
that is an amazing approach, but it takes some time. And I think that when people are a little burned out with all the things they've tried that didn't work, it's hard to hold on. But I've found that replenishing with these actually happens a lot faster than you would expect, much more so than with capsule dosing that I've done in the past. Um,
Right. It's the liquid part of it is important. And what I also find happy is I don't tell people to stop doing anything that they're doing. Don't stop your drugs. You stay on your diet, because that you start at that at a certain level and you add, say, the picometer magnesium. And then as you get energy and as your body starts detoxing, because that will happen, you'll feel better. And then you'll have some energy to be able to make changes. You can't expect someone to start a program by, oh, remove everything from your cupboard that's bad. It's just too daunting.
Yeah.
So I find that if people can get their energy back a little bit and get their sleep back, because the magnesium is going to relax your muscles and let you drift into a deeper sleep so you don't wake up already all nervous and twitchy. So I think that's important with the people we're dealing with now. There are a lot of chronically ill and sick people, and with what we went through in the COVID years, and either getting COVID and getting that genetically engineered spike protein in COVID itself, or the spike protein in the jab, where everybody is suffering. Everybody. We've all got this extra toxicity in us. And what we can depend on is making our cells healthy to reject these foreign bodies. You and Stephanie were talking about the glyphosate and how maybe the humic fulvic um, supplements could help pull out these toxins. I think they can pull out glyphosate, they can pull out plastics, I'm sure, and they can pull out other toxicity in the body, maybe the spike protein. And the humic fulvic, I work with that in my yeast protocol. I put that in with a Saccharomyces boulardii, a inulin, and I also have a, a barley powder. It's something we make. I don't really talk about it too much. It's uh, sprouted barley seeds that you create a liquid, and we do sell that liquid, but the straw that's left over from the barley sprouts, we use that as a fertilizer. And in my farm here in Maui, we've done experiments where we fertilize a plot of land for radishes. They only have a 25 day growth cycle, so we we fertilized one plot with the barley sprouts and didn't do anything to the second plot. So the plot without the barley sprouts grew 3 pounds of radishes that we could sell. They looked okay. And the other produced 85 pounds.
Oh my
And
goodness. Wow.
beautiful, red, huge. What happened to the other plot? The worms and bacteria and the weeds took it over.
Mhm.
So what I've found from that, and it's kind of a biblical recipe, barley is important in the Bible.
Yeah.
And what we realized, or what I realized with that, is this form of barley, the way we sprouted it, there's a bit of a recipe to it.
Mhm.
It gave a life force to the plant, which meant it was healthy and robust, and it detracted predators.
Right.
The predators will go to the weakest organisms. So they just crossed over and went to the other plot. So
Yeah.
what we're trying to do with our bodies is create energetic life force that will reject anything that's not supposed to be there. The body knows that we don't want the spike protein. So if we have the right building blocks, and yes, the drops are on my website as well if people want to experiment with them. I just have that radish study as my research to show that it has sort of a life force, life-giving properties. I think
Right.
it was quite amazing.
Yeah, and I think when soil is healthy, then it doesn't attract the pathogens because the plants are healthy. So, and I think that's the devastating thing about, of course, herbicides is they're changing that whole profile. And so all of the unhealthy bacteria and these negative ones are actually just coming up, and there's a place for them even in a healthy biome, but not at the level. And then yet the nourishing ones are being depleted. And it's really a tragedy, of where do we go from here. And I'm so excited that you're going to be sharing on a platform that hopefully will get people to think beyond removing artificial colors. I think that's awesome. But to me, I'm like, remove the junk food. Like, I feel like it's a bigger discussion. I'm happy you took red dye out of someone's, whatever cereal they're eating, but the whole thing is dead food. So, like, what are we really spending our money on? What are we putting it in? We've got to get back to the basics of how do we make life, and really start, stop expecting our bodies to be able to overcome the onslaught that we're putting them through, because I think we're finding that they're not up to the task because they don't have what they need. So I hope that you're heard and that it's received, and that it simplifies that we don't really need to chase all of these different food additives and change all these things. We need to change what we're eating to whole food. And a lot of those problems will, and then if the soil can actually have the mineral content that it needs and it's not being destroyed. So a new beginning, hopefully. It's a start, and you have to have that. So I'm a little negative sometimes because I think I see the whole, like, this is so big. Does anyone see what's happening? And yet you have to start somewhere. And it's like you said, I don't say you're going to change everything today. We're going to get everything out of your life because it's
Right.
overwhelming, but,
Yeah. And
but
it's educating people, just opening the conversation, and then people will go further on their own. They can't wait for the government to change everything. But you're right. Start eating whole foods. Join a CSA, community supported agriculture. You
right.
can have membership in an organic farm, and there's a system. I worked with it in New York and on City Island when I was in the Bronx. And it's amazing. You contract with a farm to bring produce for however many members. We needed about 30 members, and you get this big box of food every week through
Yeah.
the harvesting season. And you have to do that to support organic farming, for one thing, and to support your own health.
Yeah, and it's making those changes. And I actually did. I actually organized a CSA, and we did that because for a while we were growing lettuces and greens and things like that in our high tunnel. And it was amazing to see people in the community that could bring, just what they were really able to grow with the soil that they had. And the taste is so much better when you have minerals that are actually in the soil. You wouldn't believe the flavor of food when it's much sweeter naturally when there's a mineral, like a true mineral source. And so that I love doing that. But yeah, I think the need is there, and we have to change one thing. If we, to me, that's absolutely revolutionary, is to say, what, we're not going to support the big, huge farms that aren't able to grow organically on that scale. It's really not possible. And I say that from someone who's grown organically. The work that goes into a crop, it's not scalable at this point unless there's small farms that can do it and do it well. And if you can support them, then you're not trying to feed the masses, you're feeding the people in your community. And I think that's what we used to do, and people were much healthier then. And I think one of the greatest, things I like for people to say is, I eat the food I grow. That speaks volumes evidence to me if you care anything about your health, and that, you can actually know who cares about what they're doing. So little changes make a huge difference. And honestly, if we could just go to single ingredient foods, just a whole food, I think we would see a huge change in our health, that we wouldn't have to wait for the government to issue and hand down. It's not their job. I mean, there's other things that are theirs in that profile, but it's my job and your job to say this is our body, and we're responsible to do what we need to do to take care of ourselves. And something that I say to people often is, it's not your doctor's job to heal you. It never has been. Your body has all the tools that it needs. And if you want to manage a disease, then yeah, there's that. But don't expect that. It's your responsibility. We're the CEO of our own health. And that's powerful. And it shouldn't be overwhelming. It's like we actually do have control, that we often feel like we don't have. Well, I know you have to go. I could literally talk to you forever. So I'm gonna wrap it up though. But I would ask really quick, Carolyn, and if you can't do it quickly, it's fine. Could you just share a little bit about your take on the rise in osteoporosis and osteopenia, and how we're told that we should take calcium and vitamin D, and that's going to solve everything? And I know you have something on your side. I think I get a little annoyed with that whole like simplifying it to that level, and also seeing that it doesn't help at all to do just those two isolated things. So could you share a little bit about what, just with magnesium and how important it is to be in that profile for building osteoblast and actually maintaining bone?
Yes, yes. Just yesterday, actually, I taped a webinar that'll go out soon. We'll give you the link, a webinar on osteoporosis. What's happening with allopathic medicine is because they want to make a lot of money off of testing, they make every woman over 45, 50 to get a DEXA scan in
Yeah.
one of these dual photon, whatever x-rays. It's x-raying certain parts of your bones so they can tell you that you have osteopenia and osteoporosis. And they will tell most people, here I'm 76, and they compare my bones to someone who's 30. They're going to be different. I'm going to lose something. We do get a little shorter, heaven forbid. So they are starting off giving you, they know it's going to be a negative result because you're not going to have the bones of a 30-year-old. And what does that do? It scares the bejesus out of people. It really makes them feel less than.
Right.
What can I do about it? And then they want to sell you the bone drugs. And these bone drugs like Fosamax, what do? They kill your osteoclasts. Your osteoclasts are what modeled the bone into the right strong lattice work structure. Osteoblasts, you mentioned, they make new bone cells. And actually, magnesium helps both the osteoblasts and the osteoclasts. So if Fosamax kills the osteoclasts, and they tell you to take vitamin D and calcium, you're just slapping calcium onto your bones willy-nilly without it being properly structured. So you make your bones more brittle. There are more fractures of people who are on Fosamax. Oh, your bones look great. Yeah, they look dense, but they're not going to work properly. If you fall down, you're going to break something. And in your jaw, there's something called osteonecrosis that sets in, which is your jaw bones get very brittle to the point that dentists will not put a dental tooth implant into someone who's on those drugs. That's how much chaos this drug has caused. Just 2 days ago in the pool before I was taping my webinar, there were 3 women there, and they all start, oh yeah, I had a DEXA test. They said that I have osteopenia. I'm almost in osteoporosis. Oh yeah, I took Fosamax and it made me so sick I had to stop it. And, oh yeah, my husband took Fosamax and he had to draw an osteonecrosis. What's going on? And they're not telling people that the soft tissue matrix on which the minerals deposit is made of collagen and elastin, which requires vitamin C and magnesium in order to produce that soft tissue. How they decided that calcium was the one drug they would give people was they burned bone, and in the ash, they found a lot of calcium. Well, magnesium and collagen are going to burn up. They're not going to be a solid substance that's left after you burn. So that's where they start saying, oh, you have to take calcium. And studies out of New Zealand, Dr. Boland, Bolland, he had over half a dozen studies that found that even just taking calcium supplements created a higher incidence of heart disease in women. And also, he and other researchers have documented heel spurs, kidney stones, gallstones, breast tissue calcification, which is misdiagnosed as precancer quite a lot, DCIS. So we're being calcified with taking calcium supplements. And the RDA in America is the 1,200 to 1,500 milligrams. I say you just need about 600, which is what the World Health Organization, and in the UK they say 5 to 700. So I say 600 calcium, 600 magnesium. Calcium at 600 you can often get if you're on dairy products, nuts and seeds, green leafies. You go to what we have on our website is something called a chronometer. You put in your diet and find out how much, well, in general, I don't know how accurate anything is anymore, but it tells you how much calcium should be in foods. And I know myself, if I go on a yogurt binge, and after a couple of days I've eaten a quart of yogurt, I start feeling a little palpitating because it has knocked out some of my magnesium.
Right.
So I know we do absorb calcium, and there are foods where we can get it. Fish with bones is another thing. So osteoporosis is big business right now.
Mm.
They're selling the DEXA scan, selling the Fosamax, and scaring people.
Yeah, and like Prolia, like yeah, the ones that when there are breaks, they actually splinter break. So there's such a thing as having bones that are too hard. I mean, a substance that's extremely hard actually breaks more easily. But I think we're getting to the place where it's very fear driven and it's like, well, you have to do this or you're gonna break your hip, or well, there's no guarantee you're not going to anyway. And honestly, the likelihood of that. But I think it's,
Mhm.
yeah, the comparatives, and we're trusting often blindly that this information, and none of us make good decisions when we're afraid. I mean, everything just, you literally, your brain is like, oh, I got to do this. And I think we just get on this medical train where it's like, wait just a minute. Is that really the, and when I see a bone, if you see the DEXA scan reports, it actually has on there increased calcium to 1,200 milligrams and, 5,000 IUs of D. And I said, did they mention magnesium to you? Did that? No. And I'm like, oh, wow. So let's create a heart attack. Like, that's what it feels like. And I'm just like, why overlook something so that seems to go? I mean, all the minerals are paired so beautifully, calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium, like this inner working relationship that is a dance. And when that doesn't, when you take out your dance partner, you can do all the same moves, but it's not going to look very pretty, and I think that's a lot of what we're doing is really motivating people by fear when we really need to have a health model, not a disease model. And I think that would shift the whole country, which I think we are now 50th in the world for curative treatment and number one in cost. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so it's like, how, it's propped up and that needs
Mhm.
to change, So, and I think that people see,
I'll have to send you my book, Death by Modern Medicine. Have I talked about that?
no,
Yeah, yes, I've been through all this. I wrote that in 2005 after I was attending Codex meetings in Europe where they were trying to standardize dietary supplements and the amount of toxins they would allow in food. So they were trying to allow maximum amount of poisons in foods and the minimum amount of vitamins and minerals. It was
oh,
pretty scary.
get that book, Carolyn. So I'm going to do that. And actually, your 600 page, like the Magnesium Miracle one, um, I listened to that on Audible and on my way back to and from work. There was not one moment that I was not like absolutely like, what in the world? Like all this information, I didn't find it a lot at all. But I know sometimes people are like, just tell me what to do. But there's a small amount of people, and I think our audience is a lot of them that's like, I want to know why. Tell me why, and then tell me what to do. And that book is amazing. But everyone really needs to go onto the RnA Reset site, and actually we'll link that, of course, in the show notes, and they will be able to access your books on there as well. Carolyn, is that something that is in the shopping part of the website?
I have to separate my educational site from the store site. RNAReset.com is where my products are, but the FDA won't let me say that. I haven't even said the name of my formulas because they won't let me say that my formulas can help people, which is very sick. And the educational site is drcarolyndean.com. And there you can see where you can link to my radio show. I have blogs. Your podcast will be up there when it launches. And for the books, I do for the information where I do talk maybe a little more about my products. We have to create a membership site so that we can. Uh, I don't know if it's in words, but the implication is if you're not a if you are an FDA whatever, if you're hired by the FDA
Yeah,
to
I
to
know.
check up on me, you're not allowed in here. It's still bad. None of that has shifted. We're still finding that our one major mineral manufacturer, he keeps getting rated by the FDA and by state health authorities, never find anything, but they make our lives miserable because they're pretending like we're doing something wrong, whereas as we know, with my death by modern medicine, my last statistics on iatrogenic medicine was there's over 1 million people dying early and inappropriately from medical interventions, drugs, surgery, bed sores in nursing homes, all the many categories that if you just add them all up, you get a 1 million people dying because of allopathic medicine. So we're trying our darndest to help keep people alive, but it's a big job.
Yeah, and I think it's there isn't the third leading cause of death. Is that what the rating is now with the iatrogenic
Well,
injury?
yeah, I say it's the first cause, but it is acknowledged as up in, 1, 2, or 3. Yeah,
Well, and how
it's
much of
crazy.
that in autopsies is actually being reported? Like if someone dies of a heart attack and yet there were other things that caused that, like there's so much there that I don't think you could ever really, you have to know it's much higher because it's not going to be out there. I'm surprised
Reported.
we get, yeah, for it to be out there. Well, we will definitely put those links. And I tell everyone about your product. I've tried to honor that just in our podcast, saying this, but everyone can go to our show notes, to anything on our site. Like we firmly support the product that you took 4 years to make. And I think that says a lot, about your commitment to quality. And I'm excited. The minerals go in our water, the magnesium go in our water. And I've just got it. That's what I'm sipping on all day. And I didn't have anything where I could say, oh, this was wrong. And now, I mean, I feel great. And I love the fact that I have great energy. And I hope because I'm doing this, it doesn't have to change, which is not having a problem to fix is a good thing, I guess, for sure. So is there anything else, Carolyn, as far as anything else that I missed or that you wanted to share before we let you go? Because I know I've kept you over.
Oh, that's fine. It's been very enjoyable. Well, didn't you say, Happy, that your mom had a lot of symptoms?
She
What?
had the irritable, yeah, and mom wouldn't mind. I've already talked to her about that. She says, tell everyone, but she's actually has diverticulitis and then had inflammatory bowel disease and irritable bowel syndrome on it. And she literally couldn't leave her home. I mean, it was really debilitating and
Yeah.
humiliating. And, and so since that time, I was very hesitant because her experience with all types of magnesium it was terrible. And, she just wasn't willing to try anything else. And we'd tried them all. And it took 2.5 weeks. And my mom actually called me and I said, what have you done today? What have you been doing? We talk every day. And she said, or every weekday at least. And she said, I've been to town. And she talked about going with her friend. And I said, well, that's good. Did you do okay? And she said, I do not miss a day of that, she said, because I don't have to go to the bathroom when I'm out. It changed the quality of her life. And at 70 years old, something she's dealt with for really about 30 years. And so I got so excited about that. And she actually said that she's to the place now where she can miss a day, but for a little while, if she missed a day, it would be right back. And she was
Yeah.
like, I don't know. My mom just trusts me. She's like, I don't know what that stuff is, but it really makes a difference. But I think,
So there's your example. I mean, you grew up with your mom, and she had this health problem, and that's probably what directed you to a health profession. And
uh,
you've tried really hard to be healthy and stay healthy. So that's fantastic. And we learn by that type of association.
yeah. And
So
just to be able to say something that is not harmful, that self-regulates, that it's okay for everyone to say, pretty much assume that we're going to not have enough magnesium in our life in this world and that it's something that you can do without testing. And then, of course, that if you need to for certain reasons, it's available. But, well, thank you so much. I don't know that I won't bother you again for another interview, Carolyn, because I feel like we could dive into this all day long and you just barely scratched the surface. And it's such good information on there, too. But thank you so much. And everyone can find your website for both your books and for the RnA ReSet for the products. And I hope everyone will just go over there and see, because I stay on your site a lot because I'm just now exploring like the other side of it. So I'm interested in the drops you mentioned from the barley sprouts. I think that's
mm,
amazing. I
mm.
may even use it in my garden. So
Right. Yes, I at some point I'm going to have to build another building. We have our main warehouse, 30,000 square foot building in North Carolina.
really,
And yeah, that's what, yeah. And I have another plot of land, and I've always wanted to build a building and make fertilizer. COVID kind of shot the boots out of everybody. And the FDA came after all of us who were. I never said anything about COVID, but they really came down hard on all the supplement companies because they didn't want people to be using natural remedies. So it's been difficult. It's been more difficult for the population though, being shut down, fear-based, and all the rest of it. But I do know that magnesium is helpful for people who have anxiety and fears and worries because it'll calm you, it'll help you sleep. It will take the crazy talk out of your mind. I've had people who've said, I've never been able to fly because my mind, it just talks about all the problems and what if they take magnesium, my magnesium, and it shuts it off. It's remarkable.
It is.
So,
I think the GABA, the receptors that, you'd mentioned Candace Perch talking about, it's like those are magnesium dependent. So those amino acids that become serotonin, which tell you you're okay, we're safe, everything's good. When you don't have that ability, you don't get that message, which is why it's so tragic that they took that information and tried to substitute in the serotonin instead of trying to work from the top down. So that, guess what? Your body can actually make that if you have all of that going on. So I think COVID was counterproductive, and I'm very thankful for that. As hard as it has been on people, I think it started a movement of people to realize we're responsible for our health. We can't expect someone else to have the answers. And so I think that's why we're on a path that we are, hopefully, with everything else. So, but it was really a difficult time for sure.
mhm, mhm.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You're doing great work, and I really appreciate it. So, all the best. And I don't think my hearts are working today. I tried it earlier today. There's something in the new computers where you can do a heart, and all these red hearts come out.
Oh,
So,
really? Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I don't even know that. You're way ahead of me, Carolyn. I do good to get on here and do a recording and not botch it. So anyway, technology is not my thing for sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening. If this podcast inspired you or encouraged you in some way, please leave us a review or share this episode with a friend. If you need help connecting the dots of your own health journey, I would love to help you with that. You can reach me via the link below to set up a one-on-one consultation. You can also connect with us by joining our free Facebook community, which is linked below, or at healthywithhappyspurling.com. Until next time.